Welcome to the deep dive. We're here, really, to act as your guides, to cut through the noise, and pull out the most vital insights from the source material we look at each week. This week, we're diving into a really powerful examination of spiritual leadership. It's based on the notes from Pastor Malcolm Macqueen's sermon this past Sunday, October 19th, Paul the Responsible Parent, delivered right here at King's Christian Center in Old Town Swindon.
That's right. And we're really zeroing in on 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, specifically verses 7 and 8. Paul doesn't just describe a relationship there. He actually models this profound sense of responsibility towards the believers he discipled. So this deep dive, it's structured around what Pastor Malcolm identified as Paul's 4 areas of, non-negotiable spiritual parenthood.
Okay, what are those 4 areas?
Right. So taking responsibility for spiritual birth, then for spiritual growth, thirdly, spiritual activity, and finally, spiritual hope.
That sounds like a really complete picture of discipleship, how we're meant to care for those we mentor in faith, basically.
Exactly. It covers the whole journey.
And just a quick reminder for you listening, if you want the full context, maybe hear Pastor Malcolm's delivery, the complete sermon is up right now on the KCC YouTube channel.
Yeah, just search for @KCC Old Town Swindon, UK. You'll find this sermon and all the previous messages there too.
Great resource. But for now, let's unpack this first point. Paul as a father, because as you know, Paul was famously unmarried. He talks about it in 1 Corinthians 7. No physical children. Yet he calls the believers in Thessalonica his children. It feels a bit counterintuitive, doesn't it, thinking of him as a parent?
It does, initially. But Pastor Malcolm really highlighted this point. Paul fathered countless spiritual children.
How? Just through preaching.
Simply through preaching the gospel, yeah.
Yeah.
And what really stands out is the distinction Paul makes, between just instructing someone and actually being their spiritual father. He told the Corinthians, didn't he? You might have 10,000 instructors, but not many fathers.
Right. So what's the difference then? An instructor gives information.
Exactly. An instructor gives data, facts. But a father, a spiritual father, initiates life, gives identity. Paul says, I have begotten you through the gospel.
Oh.
So it's not just about handing out information leaflets, It's about this deep personal relationship that born out of the gospel message itself.
And it's because of that depth, that relationship, that he could call them to be, what was the word? Mimetes.
Mimetes, yeah. Imitators of him, just as he was imitating Christ.
But imitation isn't just like copying passively, is it? If you tell someone, follow me, your spiritual child needs to see how you handle things.
Precisely. They need to know what you look like when you face difficulty. How do you react under pressure? What do Christ's thoughts actually look like when they're translated into your actions?
That's a high bar, especially when you're not physically there.
And that's the real challenge, isn't it? Which leads us straight into the context of 1 Thessalonians. Paul's writing this letter from Athens.
Right, and they're in Thessalonica, which is quite a distance.
Yeah, about 310 miles away. And it was maybe 2, possibly 3 years after he'd first established the church there.
And he wanted to go back.
Desperately. But he says he was, quote, hindered by Satan. Couldn't get there himself.
So, okay, if he couldn't be there physically, how did he maintain that fatherly responsibility? How did he bridge that gap?
Well, this is key. He sent Timothy. That action, sending Timothy, it just speaks volumes, doesn't it? It's the ultimate statement of spiritual responsibility. You might be out of sight, but you are absolutely not out of my mind.
So a responsible spiritual parent makes sure their child is cared for, even if they can't be the one doing the caring directly.
That's it. They find a way. And what unites all these spiritual children, regardless of where they come from?
The gospel message itself.
The core message Paul preached. That Jesus died on the cross for the sin of humankind, was buried, and rose again. It's simple, but incredibly powerful. And when you accept that message, believe it, it brings this oneness in Christ. Doesn't matter what your family background is, your nationality, your culture, none of that matters in the same way anymore.
Right, you get this new identity, and that identity comes through. How does Paul put it in Romans?
Romans 10, verses 9 and 10. It's about confessing Jesus as Lord with your mouth and believing in your heart that God raised him from the dead. That leads to salvation.
And for the Thessalonians, that was a massive shift, wasn't it? From idols to the living God.
Huge. And that moment, that turning, that's the moment of spiritual birth.
Okay. So spiritual birth happens, life is created, but then the responsible parent has to move straight onto the second thing, right? Spiritual growth.
Absolutely crucial. Because as we all know, physical growth just happens. It's automatic, inevitable. But Paul emphasizes, and Pastor Malcolm really drove this home, spiritual maturity is not inevitable.
You have to work at it, or rather be nurtured into it.
Exactly. It's a necessity, a profound one. And Paul shows this by actually switching metaphors. In 1 Thessalonians 2:7, he stops talking like a father for a moment and says he acted as a nursing mother cherishes her own children.
A nursing mother. That's a very different image, much gentler.
Intense gentleness, yeah.
Yeah.
Vulnerability, sustained nurturing. It shows he wasn't just this, powerful spiritual authority figure from afar. He was also the caregiver, tending to them with a really soft heart.
And that's why he sent Timothy, for that nurturing aspect.
Precisely for this, to establish them, strengthen them in the faith. Which brings us to the practical question. How does spiritual growth actually happen?
Good question. What's the mechanism?
Well, ultimately, it boils down to appetite. It's like Peter says, growth is tied to our desire for the sincere milk of the word.
Okay, so the Bible is the food.
It's the spiritual nourishment. If you're born again, that new spiritual life demands food. So, a fundamental measure of your spiritual health is simply, how hungry are you for the Bible?
That makes perfect sense. And if the Bible is the food, didn't Jesus provide like a structure to make sure we actually get fed? Before he ascended, you mentioned gifts.
Exactly. He gave specific gifts to the church. The gift ministries. Apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher. Ephesians 4 tells us they were given specifically for the equipping of the saints for the work of ministry.
Equipping the saints. So preparing us.
Preparing us, building us up. It's all designed to lead to spiritual growth and maturity. It's like a support system Jesus put in place to help the whole body grow up into him.
That's vital, especially when you pair it with the other side of that coin, the idea that every born-again believer receives a gift, some spiritual gift to use.
Yes, for the work of the Lord.
Which means, really, no one in the church should ever feel like they've got nothing to contribute, right? No one should feel they have nothing to do.
Absolutely not. Everyone has a part to play in the body. And Paul knew this growth doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Yeah.
It's not always smooth sailing. That's another reason he sent Timothy, not just for teaching, but also to comfort and encourage them. Because the Thessalonians were already going through trials, facing persecution.
Right. Hardship was part of their reality from the start.
It was, and that's a real test of spiritual growth, isn't it?
Blah.
When trials hit, if you don't intentionally turn to the Lord, lean on him, rely on that word,
Yeah.
well, the pressure can just as easily drive you away from God as draw you closer.
So that nurturing, that strengthening is crucial for navigating the tough times.
As essential.
Okay, so that structure, that growth, it sets the stage for the third area Paul took responsibility for, spiritual activity.
Yes. And this involves a really subtle but critical principle Pastor Malcolm pointed out. We engage in spiritual activity, things like prayer, worship, service, because God has already made us good and righteous through Christ, not in order to become good or earn his favor.
So the activity flows from our position in Christ. It doesn't create it.
Exactly. It flows from health. It doesn't create health. It's the expression of the life within.
So what activities did Paul highlight for the Thessalonians?
He gives a sort of practical action plan for sustained holistic health. It's right there in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5.
Yeah.
3 really simple, non-negotiable activities.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, rejoice evermore. Verse 16, just rejoice. Always.
Always. That sounds difficult.
It does, doesn't it? But Paul presents it as the key to our emotional health.
And Pastor Malcolm shared that story, didn't he, about Hugh Fraser?
That's right, the farmer who, despite all the trials and difficulties on the farm, was apparently always smiling, always rejoicing. It's a great illustration that rejoicing isn't based on having favorable circumstances. It's based on faith in a God who is always favorable, always good, regardless of our situation.
Okay, so rejoice evermore for emotional health. What's number 2?
Number 2, pray without ceasing. Verse 17. This, Paul says, is the key to our spiritual health.
Pray without ceasing. Does that mean literally praying 247?
Not necessarily non-stop talking, but maintaining a constant connection, an open line, an attitude of prayer. And crucially, it involves the command to cast all your cares upon him.
Casting our cares. That sounds easier said than done sometimes. Pastor Malcolm talked about being careless.
Yeah, careless in the best sense of the word. Transferring the worry, the burden, permanently to the Lord.
Permanently. That's the tricky bit, isn't it? We often tell God our problems.
And then we pick them right back up again as we walk away.
Exactly. The instruction is to cast them, leave them with him. Trust that he's actually capable of handling them, more capable than we are.
So it's an act of trust, releasing the burden.
It is, freeing up your own spiritual energy. Okay, so that's spiritual health. The third activity,
What's the third one?
in everything, give thanks. Verse 18, this is presented as the key to our mental health.
Mental health. That's huge. Giving thanks in everything, even the bad stuff. Well, it says in everything, not necessarily for everything. But yes, finding reasons for gratitude even within difficult circumstances. We hear a lot about living in an unthankful society, don't we? But gratitude, for the believer, it's far more than just good manners. It's a spiritual discipline.
How does it help mental health?
It forces our perspective upwards. Instead of letting our minds spiral down into negativity, despair, or self-pity, consciously giving thanks lifts our focus to God's goodness, His sovereignty, His faithfulness. It helps establish mental stability.
So rejoicing, praying constantly, and giving thanks in everything, those three are like the operational framework for a healthy, active believer.
That's a great way to put it. The framework for holistic health, emotional, spiritual, and mental.
Okay. That leads us to the fourth and final area of Paul's parental responsibility. What was that again?
Spiritual hope. Ensuring his spiritual children grasp the glorious hope that belongs to every believer.
Hope. And Paul seemed really concerned about this, didn't he? He says somewhere, if our hope is only in this life.
Yeah, 1 Corinthians 15. If our hope in Christ is only for this life, we are of all men most miserable. Our hope has to transcend this world.
So what is this hope exactly? Pastor Malcolm mentioned G.K. Chesterton.
He did. Chesterton defined hope brilliantly as expectancy when things are otherwise hopeless. It's not just wishful thinking. It's a confident expectation anchored in God's promises, even when our current reality looks bleak. It stabilizes us.
And Paul had this thing, didn't he? This almost personal quirk Pastor Malcolm mentioned. He really didn't want people to be ignorant about spiritual truth.
Yes, you see it pop up again and again in his letters. I would not have you to be ignorant, brethren. He uses that phrase quite a bit. And here in 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 13, he says it specifically regarding them which are asleep, those who had died.
Okay, so what was the ignorance he was fighting against there? What were they getting wrong?
Well, it seems some false teachers had come along, or maybe just some misunderstanding arose, suggesting that Christians who had already died would somehow miss out on Christ's return. They'd miss the main event.
Oh, wow. That would be terrifying for them, wouldn't it? Especially if they were already facing persecution and seeing fellow believers die.
Exactly. Imagine thinking your loved ones who died in faith were now at a disadvantage. It was causing deep anxiety and sorrow beyond normal grief. Paul needed to correct that error urgently.
So how did he correct it? What's the specific hope he gives them?
He gives them that monumental assurance, that incredible picture of the Lord's return. He says, look, don't worry. The Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel and with the trump of God. And here's the crucial part for them. The dead in Christ will rise first.
They rise first, so they don't miss out at all.
Not at all. They get front row seats, essentially. Then Paul continues, we who are alive and remain will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air.
Caught, the rapture.
That's the moment and the ultimate outcome. And so shall we ever be with the Lord. That's the core of the hope. Reunion with those who've gone before and eternal presence with Jesus.
Wow. And Paul spells all that out. Why? Just for doctrinal accuracy.
Well, yes, accuracy matters, but the immediate purpose he states right there in verse 18 is incredibly simple and pastoral. Therefore, comfort one another with these words.
It's comfort. He's fulfilling his parental duty by making sure his kids aren't needlessly afraid or ignorant about their amazing future, their destiny.
Precisely. He's establishing firm, specific, glorious hope.
It really is a complete circle, isn't it? Paul's sense of responsibility covered their spiritual birth.
Bring them into the family.
Making sure they experience spiritual growth.
Nurturing them like a mother.
Guiding their daily spiritual activity.
Keeping them healthy emotionally, spiritually, mentally.
And finally, anchoring them in their eternal spiritual hope.
The whole package.
It's an incredible example set before us. An invitation, really, for us to imitate that same sense of parental responsibility in our own spheres of influence, just like Paul imitated Christ.
It really is. And, if we connect this whole picture back to our lives right now, today, think about what Jesus said in John's gospel. He guarantees, doesn't he, in the world you shall have tribulation. It's not an if, it's a when.
Yeah, that part's certain.
But in the very same breath, he offers peace. My peace I give unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. It's a peace the world can't give, and crucially, a peace the world can't take away. It passes all understanding.
And that peace, How does it connect to Paul's model?
Well, I think Paul's entire model of responsible spiritual parenting, covering birth, growth, activity, and hope, is ultimately designed to lead people into that very peace, to bring them to a place where, regardless of the tribulation Jesus guaranteed, their hearts are not troubled or afraid, because they are secure in Christ, growing in Him, active for Him, and anchored in His hope. That's the ultimate legacy of a good spiritual parent, isn't it?
That's a really profound thought to end on, bringing people into that peace, despite the world around them. Well, we really hope this deep dive has given you a lot to think about this week. Reflect on Paul's example, perhaps how you can apply that sense of responsibility in your own life, maybe in mentoring others.
Yeah, definitely something to chew on.
Thank you so much for diving deep with us into Pastor Malcolm Macqueen's sermon, Paul the Responsible Parent. And don't forget, you can find the full message and all the previous KCC sermons over on the YouTube channel.
That's at KCCAOG, Old Town, Swindon, UK.
Check it out. Until next time.
Take care.